Wants to stop.
Yeah. Just let me know and I
Okay.
can.
You can just say enough, or you can say maybe stop. So please.
Okay.
Okay. So I just really want to start off then, talking about your very early career as an actress.
Well, let us say there was not a lot of work around. I was in rep at Richmond and Camden Town. There was a rep there, and Watford. Clapham.
Goodness.
What's that one near Southend-on-Sea? Another one down there. Anyway, somewhere down there. And I did that, but there wasn't a lot of work around, and it was after the war, so I wasn't a sort of 16-year-old or anything like that.
No.
So I was at that awkward age when there weren't a lot of parts going for 20s and so on. And I did a television show. It was called Ladies in Waiting, and it was an all-girl cast. And the director was a new learning director, which the BBC were running, I think, courses to teach people because there weren't a lot around. And she was a woman called Joy Harrington, who became quite famous as a director and won a lot of awards and things. And I don't know, we struck it off. We had kids the same age, and we became friends. And she was moaning one day. She said, "Oh, going mad. I've been asked to do another series, and I can't find any scripts." And I said, "I'm sure I could write one." She said, "Well, do." So I went straight home and wrote one and gave it to her, and a week later it was commissioned.
Can you remember what the script was?
It was for a children's programme, Stranger from Space.
Did that become a series?
Yes. It ran for about 3 years, I think.
And you were the sole scriptwriter?
Yeah.
Where did the idea come from?
Oh, no idea. Where do any ideas come from?
It's true. And so from that point, did you think script writing is something I can do?
Yes. Well, I mean, you know, I had a large family I had to support, and therefore it was money, and not very much money in those days, I have to say.
And hard work, I'm guessing, with
Yes,
deadlines.
I think. Better not go into print on this, but I think one got £60 an hour. When you think these days people get thousands.
Absolutely, absolutely. And can you remember roughly when that was? Would that be the sort of early 1950s, or?
Yes, it would be.
And did you write any other children's series after school?
Oh, hundreds of them.
Can you remember any of the names?
Saturday Special, Whirligig.
Now, Whirligig's one that I've read a little bit about. Can you tell us a little bit more about Whirligig?
Well, that was a sort of magazine programme, and it had lots of different items in it of interest, but they had in it a drama serial, and I wrote that bit, which was I think a 15 or 20 minute slot in the hour's programme.
Can you remember? I know, can you remember what the drama series was about? Just about
Stranger from Space.
So that takes us there. So from there, in 1955, you worked in Sixpenny Corner.
That's right, yes.
Can you tell us, I'm very interested to know about the series, and you worked with Jonquil Anthony.
Well, she didn't write it, actually. I met her through writing Mrs. Dale's Diary, which she did for years.
Right.
She was really the queen of that. But she was quite a bit older than me, but she couldn't adapt to television. She
that is
written
interesting.
for radio for so long.
It's very interesting.
And of course, for television, you don't need a lot of dialogue. It's all in the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And she would overwrite a script with dialogue. So they didn't want to continue with her as a scriptwriter for that, although she went on writing
Mm-hmm.
radio for years and books.
Goodness.
Yes, but she couldn't make the break into television. She couldn't write in pictures.
And didn't that happen to quite a lot of radio writers?
I think it did, yes. There weren't many who successfully made the transition.
And I suppose because you started as a television writer, you started from the basis that there were pictures. Did you write for radio?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
2284. Hello? Hello, Tricia. Can I call you back? I'm in the middle of an interview. Okay, bye. Sorry about that.
No, but it's very interesting, the distinction between the radio writer and the television writer. Did you write for radio, obviously, for Mrs. Dale's Diary?
I wrote that, yes.
How did it feel writing for radio? Did you have to get a different head on?
Not really, no. Because I've always listened to radio as well, but not once television started. I watched that rather than listen to radio.
So the Sixpenny Corner, can you just tell me a little bit about the series and how you got involved with it in the first place?
Oh, that was easy. Wait a minute, it was for Rediffusion, wasn't it? And that was a
ITV,
new
yeah.
ITV
It was
company.
the first,
And,
the first soap opera, in fact.
Eric Mashwitz was at that time there and one of the producers. And he, I think, encouraged the fact. And the only reason it came off, because it was very popular, was the unions brought in an overtime ban.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes. And no programme that was on television was allowed to go into overtime. Well, being a daily serial, of course, it went into overtime. So they said, sorry, we'll have to take it off.
Because again, very popular in the TV Times, lots of letters from people saying they really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And they moved it from slots, didn't they? They moved it to an evening slot, I think.
Yes, it started as a morning slot and they moved it to an evening slot.
I guess because it was very popular, people...
Oh, it was, yes. Got a lot of fan mail on that. And I actually, it's funny, but I had a man who obviously was addicted to it from Glasgow. And he rang me up. How he got my phone number, I'll never know. And he said, I'm going to kill you unless you put it back on. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to come down and kill you.
We're very direct people. That's people related to me, not an uncle or something. Yeah. But that's fantastic, though, that you were reaching Glaswegian men. I mean, if you could get Glaswegian men watching, I can only apologise if he's not related. He's not a great uncle or something. Here. Could you tell us just a little bit? I mean, it was set around a family that owned a garage.
That's right, yes. And I set it, purposely did, I set it in a garage that was on the edge of an old village, and they were building a new town right near it. So I had the conflict of the old-time villagers, very staid in their ways, and the new, young, thrusting.
Can you remember any particular storylines? It's an awful lot to ask.
Not really, no.
So that ran for what, 2 years, 3 years? I'm trying to think.
About 18 months, I think. And it was only, as I say, killed because of the overtime ban. That's the only reason it was taken off, because it was very popular. And Rediffusion, who made it, didn't want to lose it.
Of course not.
But they were forced.
By the power of the unions. I hadn't thought about the strength of the unions in that period, but obviously we're able to do that. And was it just you basically writing the scripts for this?
Yes, yes.
It's an awful lot of work. I know
It
you're a
was,
very hard
yes,
worker.
it was, yeah.
So I mean, how many? Five scripts? Was it on 5 nights a week?
To begin with, it was 5 days
Yeah.
a week, and then I think actually the crews couldn't take the pressure, and they cut it down to 3 days a week.
I was thinking of writing 15 minutes of television 5 nights a week. I can't think of anybody now even dreaming of doing that. I mean, that just seems...
I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I have to
I
think.
can't imagine with 6 children, and again the stories I guess just came because you were in the zone. And
I always had a fertile imagination, even as a child.
and you were an only child, you said,
Yeah.
so that kind of... And were you writing stories as a small child?
I never wrote them. I'm terribly lazy. I hate actually.
You've written 15 minutes for 5 nights. You can't be lazy. I wish I was that lazy.
I'm terribly lazy. And I hated, sitting at a desk and writing. And I never got in. I could use a typewriter, but I always wrote first and then typed because I had a phobia about spoiling a typed page and didn't like to mess about with it.
But just a huge workload. I'm thinking of somebody nowadays being told, we want you to turn out really good stories that people like, 5 days a week, just an incredible workload, just standing outside.
Well, nobody asks me to write down.
I know.
I think they think I'm dead, probably. Yeah. I'm so old.
Well, they certainly won't think you are after this. They certainly won't think you are. Could we move to Emergency Ward 10?
Yes.
Now, how did you get involved with writing for this series?
It was started by Tessa Darman, who was very young and had no experience in television at all.
Goodness.
And she found the pressure of it, the writing that amount in a short time, almost impossible to cope with because she was so inexperienced, And I was rung up by Lou Grade.
Where?
And he said, can you come in and see me? And I said, yeah.
It's not a little bit frightening. I mean, you read such stories about Lou Grade, were you a little bit worried, or did you feel confident about meeting him?
Oh, I didn't worry about meeting him. I was thrilled to bits. I mean, one had longed for the chance. And I went in and he said, you've been to America? And I said, yes. And he said, and you know about soaps? And I said, yes. And he said, we're doing this Emergency Ward 10. How would you feel about writing it? So I said, I feel fine, thank you very much. So he said, right, and I got a contract the next week.
So, how much did you write? Lots and lots of scripts. How much was your involvement?
Oh yes, I did to begin with. Until Tessa got the hang of it, And then between the two of us, we coped with it. And then I got offered the film of it.
Right.
And so I wrote that, and I got offered other series and things, and I thought, well, I'll give up Emergency Ward 10 because the research on it, the medical research and the demands, and they moved to the Midlands, and having to go up there, for script conferences and everything, I thought, I'll stick with the work I've got down here.
So were you doing the medical research for your own storylines, or were
yes, we had it. Well, I mean, we had a medical consultant on, so could bring him up. But you used to have to go and spend days in hospitals and things like that.
I never imagined. So you
watched a heart surgery.
What was that like?
They were very worried I would faint. I was too. I didn't. But I didn't keep my eyes on it all the time, I have to admit.
And can you remember any other procedures or hospital operations that you watched, or is that the one that sticks? I guess
that's the one that sticks in my mind, yeah.
Can you remember any of the kind of the big storylines that you wrote and set up, ones that the viewers really enjoyed? I mean, the interracial kiss is obviously the storyline that people talk about. Was that one that you wrote?
Which one?
A relationship between Louise Mayer and Dr. Giles Farmer.
I don't remember much about that. I probably wrote some of it.
Sorry, you might have to put it in those terms.
Yes, sorry. No, not the black and white kiss.
The black person, the black woman
kissing
the white doctor.
I remember that, but I remember the relationship more because we had it in compact. And we had a kiss between them in compact.
Because I got confused because in fact in both series.
And there was a big drama because being BBC compact, they were very worried, and it had to go to the Board of Governors.
Goodness.
Right the way up to them to give permission to have a black and white relationship and a kiss. I said, but if we have a relationship, they're bound to kiss. I mean, it would be unreal if they didn't, you know. But there was a big hoo-ha, and all the way to the Board of Governors.
And this was a storyline that you had written and you were very determined would be used.
Well, I mean, it was everyday life. It was going on.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I mean, 1964.
And why fight shy of that? I mean, you know.
Do you remember the viewers' response?
Oh, terrific.
Could you tell me a little bit just about what you remember? Because that's fascinating to know what people, how your fans responded to this.
Oh, well, particularly among the coloured population, they were very encouraging. They loved it.
And
there were some disapproving. Not coloured.
Really
white.
So did people write in fan letters?
Oh yes, yes. Bags of it.
And did you see? I mean, did you have a look at what the fans were saying, or?
As much as I could. I mean, there was an awful lot to get through.
Well, because I was thinking, I mean, just looking in the archives, what strikes me about Compact, and I'll go into it a little bit later, but people really felt it was theirs.
Yes.
And they were cross with you sometimes when their characters, their favourites, disappeared. I
cannot tell you the amount of mail and threats I got when they took it off.
Really?
It was so popular and it was getting higher ratings than anything.
So people were blaming you for
yes, they were, yeah.
I hadn't realised that.
Oh yes, very much so. Why did you take it off? I didn't want to.
Let's maybe move on to Compact then, if we can. And you got the idea because you'd written for women's magazines, or? I
was actually sitting in a woman's magazine waiting to see the editor about something I'd written. And I thought to myself, this would make a good series.
What particularly do you think, this is something that would be good to write about? What was it?
Well, I thought to myself, you know, people didn't realise how much went into the making of a magazine, and also how popular they were in those days.
And still are. I mean, women's magazines, I think, still.
But those days, they were absolutely, I mean, people like Claire Rayner, remember, was considered a goddess, you know, and things like that. And I thought to myself, there's nothing like this on television.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
There wasn't at that time anything like it. And so I thought I wrote it. And at that time, Eric Mashwitz was head of drama. And he loved it. He said, this is exactly the right thing. And commissioned it.
Now, something that a lot of people that are interested in your work, I think, are interested in, were you consciously writing for women because women loved it?
No. I just thought it's an interesting idea. Hasn't been done. No,
Mm.
I never ever wrote for women because I don't think my ideas would be terribly popular with women, you see.
Really? Well, why do you think? Because they were, because women loved it. I'm really interested.
Well, my feeling is, I don't like this sort of softly thing for women. Why should they be allowed to have jobs just because they're women? I think you have a job because you can do it and people think you're good at it. And I don't think you should be given it just because you're a woman. And there's very much, particularly today, they will, if there are a lot of people up for a job, they will tend to go for a woman over a man, even though their abilities are equal. And I don't think that's right. I think if women get a job, they should get it because they're worthy of it.
Were there many women writing at the kind of level that you were writing at when you were working for the BBC?
Not a lot, no.
Do you have any idea why that you were?
Well, I think because the heads of departments were all men, and they didn't think very much of women's talent. There was no proven. I mean, novelists are women, but they wouldn't work for television even if they could because the money was so poor.
And did you ever feel conscious of being a woman in a very high position working at the BBC, or did you just do your job?
I just got on with it. No, I never was conscious of it.
No, of course not.
Other than the need to deliver on time,
And it wasn't any more difficult because you were a woman, or there wasn't any more pressure, or?
Not in soaps, no.
So, do you think women in soaps were seen as a sort of, well, you started the soaps, but was that seen as a more natural fit than women in other places?
I think people in power thought so. I don't consider it right. I mean,
of course not.
But they thought so, and because I needed work to support a large family, I did it.
No, it's very interesting that you did the work you did, and you didn't spend too long thinking about, I'm a woman, you just got on and did it.
No.
No, we wouldn't have time. There's some things to do.
No.
Just talking, there's so many things that I could ask you about Compact. Why do you think people loved it so much? Because they just adored it?
They did, you see. I mean, it was an absolute scandal that they took it off. If it had been not for the BBC but for ITV, it would be still running today. I promise you.
Oh, I believe you. Why do you think ITV would have continued its life when the BBC
did?
Oh,
because they were very conscious of commercial things, whereas the BBC weren't in those days.
Do you think the BBC, I mean, it got, I think it was 9 million viewers. I mean, probably more than EastEnders. I was thinking that it should be Compact.
I can tell you something. Can we turn the recording off? Because I don't want to get sued. He has a sort of aura surrounding him that's very frightening, but he wasn't when you knew him. He was quite friendly, and I got on with him like a house on fire.
Do you think he sort of respected creative or successful creative people?
I think he probably did, yes. And I always remember one and only time I went to the Cannes Film Festival. I was taken there by, I can't remember the name of the company that started Channel 4 way back.
Oh my!
What was the name of it?
Phil Redmond.
I can't remember who they were, but anyway.
I can see them in my head. I mean,
yes, Al Burgess was one.
Yeah.
Jeremy.
Oh my goodness, Isaacs?
Yes, Jeremy Isaacs.
Because he's from Glasgow as well.
Yes. And they just started up. And I was writing something for them, and they were going for the very first time to Cannes Film Festival, and they said, we'd like you to come, would you like to? Would I?
Oh wow.
And I actually paid for my trip in a way, because the first day we were out walking down, and we bumped into Lou Gray, and he said, "Hello, Hazel, what are you doing here?" And my stop up front.
I don't understand it. Because of course his nephew, Michael Gray, of course is such a kind of, you know, key player later down the line in the whole Channel 4.
Yes, and I knew Michael, but I didn't actually do very much for him because...
No, you agree. There's so many myths about him. I mean, if you study television history, he's one of the people you can't get away from.
A lot of people were absolutely petrified.
But that's why I'm surprised, because that's what I keep reading. He was terrifying. And he'd slam his fist down on the desk.
Oh, he would. He did that while I was there one day, because I was seeing him about, I think it was a programme called Deadline Midnight, I read something of. And suddenly, in the middle of the conversation, he slammed his fist on his desk, and I jumped and I said, "Why didn't I think of you?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Yes." He said, "I want a soap opera, and it's got to star..." Can we turn this off a moment? And I said, "Well, yes, I think so." He said, "Well, if you can, I want it by next Tuesday." This was a Thursday.
Did you never feel a bit scared inside? I can't imagine if somebody said to me, "Right, next Tuesday." Did you just think, "I've got to do it"?
Well, that's it.
Fear is a very good motivator. Could we go back just to Compact just for a little bit?
Yes.
The thing that really comes out is the relationship between Ian Harmon and Sally Henderson, and the amount of letters in the amount of letters from fans was just amazing. Why didn't the fans were so fond of those two characters? Why did they connect with them so well?
Well, they were both charismatic actors.
Right.
And she was a very, very good actress. I won't say he was a very good actor, but he was very good looking. And
oh, well, the ladies loved him, yes.
But she was ambitious, and she got an offer to make a film in Hollywood, and so she took it, naturally.
Well, of course, yes.
And so that's why we had to write her out of the series.
And with the fans, from what I can read, they were raging.
Of course they blamed me.
Do you think people in those days, I guess they maybe didn't understand that you weren't in charge of television schedules? So what did you get letters saying? Dear Hazel?
Hundreds of them. How dare you?
How did you, I mean, as a scriptwriter, what do you do with that when the fans love what you're doing, but you have to...
Well, there's nothing you can do. I just wrote back and said it wasn't my decision. Take it up with the controllers of the programme.
Now, from what I read, Sally did come back, or the actress who played Sally, they were reunited, were they? Did the relationship pick up again? I really have picked that up.
I don't think she came back, no.
And
he went on, but I don't recall her coming back.
No, that would probably be my mistake.
I don't know. You could be right. You see, my memory is not that.
No, I think they're your characters. I think you probably know a lot more about it than I do. Do you remember any of the other characters, particularly? I mean, there are so many. I mean, just going through the files, there's so many terrific characters.
Sorry to say, if you have his name,
I remember.
Then you can bring it, you know, like say the photographer. Do you remember?
Yeah.
You've got his
Bobby
name
Desmond, who played.
Thank you. Sorry, Mary.
No, it's the problem.
Bobby Desmond, sticking out ears.
Yeah, but that's the script. I mean, there are so many.
I can't remember what he played.
No, so one of the characters that people really loved was Gussie. The feature
yes,
editor.
but I was bringing up Bobby Desmond because the viewers loved him.
Why didn't that
And
last?
he wasn't a brilliant actor, let's face
No.
it. And the directors and producers wanted to get shot of him.
Goodness.
And they ordered me
Mm-hmm.
to write him out. And there was a flood of protests, all which came to me. How dare you do such a thing, you know?
The viewers really connected with you. It seems to me that they kind of they really saw you rightly.
They felt that I was in charge
Mm-hmm.
of the whole thing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't. I was working to whoever was the producer at the time.
It must have been an incredibly stressful, I mean stressful is a very modern word, but it must have been a very tough schedule. I mean again producing, what, half an hour of television twice
Twice a week.
And very high powered, I mean lots of complicated storylines and
if you remember when it started, it was before recording, you see. In
I
the
noticed
later,
that, yeah.
they did record one. They'd
mm.
shoot one live and one recorded each week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in the early days, it was all live.
Was that difficult in terms of managing actors, learning lines and managing all the production staff? I mean, was that...
Well, I'm sure it was, but I didn't have a lot to do with that.
Sure, but I mean, it must have been difficult, I think, just in terms of producing the programme. Was it hard?
One of the things that was, we always had, I don't know why they always do this, but soaps they give a very low budget to.
Of course, yeah.
And of course, as actors became popular, they wanted
that's a new point.
their salaries upped, and of course powers that be wouldn't pay more, so we were ordered to write them out. But who got the blame for writing them out?
I hadn't thought so. Basically all the stress of the programme comes to you, the viewers' concerns. Did the actors ever come to you and say, I want this to happen for my character?
Not very much, no.
Were they just realised that their job was to do what they were asked to do?
They had ideas, but you know, one couldn't afford to take notice of them. I mean, I had people come and say, I want to go for 3 weeks holiday for so on, so can you write me out for 3 weeks? I said, no.
No,
I can't.
Of course. Were you ever swayed when people would write in and say, oh, please, 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 let these characters get together. Please, 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 let Iris get a boyfriend or something?
Oh, yes, I got lots of letters like that.
And did you take notice of them, or did you just say, no,
Well,
this is my
I took
story?
notice of them, but I mean, I wasn't in charge. I couldn't.
I mean, when you were writing your storylines, were you ever sort of swayed by people saying, oh, we'd like this to happen, or...?
Not really, no, because you see, the trouble was you wrote so much in advance.
Of course, yes, yes.
I mean, to begin with, we were 3 months in advance. We got it back to 6 weeks, but that's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't know what's going to happen in the world, so it's very difficult to keep topical.
Yeah. Of course, and also I suppose practically with actors maybe being unwell or people not showing up for work.
Oh.
I mean, and a big cast. You know, I mean, that's something else that really, you know, strikes me. A lot of people to slot in.
I remember one terrible Christmas, and I can't remember the name of the actor, but they were in a car crash.
Oh, that's awful.
And on Christmas Eve. And we had to go in on Christmas Day, Peter Ling and I, and work to rewrite.
Oh. So it really bit into your private life?
Oh, totally.
I mean, did you have much time for a life out with of work when Compact was at its peak?
Not as much as one would have liked. But there you are. I don't know that any of them have suffered particularly from it.
They don't look too bad, they look fine.
Do you feel that...
Well, I wasn't born then.
No, but do you feel Dad has suffered from...
He's
great.
Yeah.
He's great. He's fine.
He's fine.
Something else that I found interesting, there was a really lovely letter about an old lady who'd approached, I think it was Sally, in the street, and had told her off for her behaviour in the office, and she'd said, when you go back into work tomorrow, you know, behave yourself. And I mean, your viewers really took the character seriously.
Oh, they thought it was real. They really identified with it much more than they do these days. I suppose because television was reasonably new to people. Now viewers are very
Mm.
sophisticated. They don't.
Yeah.
They know it's all make believe. But in those days, they thought it was real life.
Yeah, I mean, they and really and cared. I think cared about the characters. There was a
very
real
much
passion
so.
about them.
Very much so.
You know? I'm going to ask the woman question again. You'll tell me off. I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you think more women were watching? I know that you were just writing good television, but do you think there were more women viewers than men? My hunch is that women especially loved your work.
Oh, I think they did. But then, you see, I mean, they were mostly on at times when women were at home,
Oh,
and men weren't, you see.
of course.
But Compact did have a lot of men fans. I was quite surprised. I
I'm
mean,
interested in that, yeah.
I actually got approached by a quite well-known lawyer wanting to know what was, he was going abroad on some case or other, and he wanted to know what was happening.
But people were really, I mean,
And I'll tell you another thing.
There should be another
I was literally the offcuts, yeah,
Yes.
the kind of.
Funny because, you know, when they got on the phone and they said, oh, it's Clarence House here, she was living in Clarence House. I said, oh yes. I said, it's
Clarence
Buckingham
House?
Palace here, you know, because I didn't believe.
Well, no, so Clarence House are on the phone, and then did the Queen Mother actually? So what did she say? What did the Queen Mother say? Did she say she?
Well, she said, I'm going abroad with Margaret to Rhodesia, I think it was in those days.
Of course, yeah.
And we're going for several weeks. And I desperately want to know what happens, and I can't remember the storyline she was interested in. Would you mind telling me if I promise not to tell anybody?
So did you tell her?
Oh, yeah.
And she didn't, so far as you know, tell anyone. She
Well, I don't know if she did or not, but anyway.
It's marvellous now. I mean, Compact, just so many different kinds of people just enjoyed it so much. Maybe just go back to some of the characters, just see if these trigger any memories. Iris and Stan.
Yes, Stan was Johnny.
You have me there. He played a handyman, didn't he? He played a kind
Yes,
of-
Johnny, what was his name?
No, I don't.
Did a lot with Ted Dix, the piano player.
No, you have me there. No idea.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I got quite friendly with him. The girl who played Iris, I didn't. She was a little bit up in her own world. She thought she was going to become a star.
Dear, and I didn't clearly because the name doesn't.
So she didn't socialise much. You know.
Okay.
But in those days, one did socialise with, there was sort of more time because I would go to the recordings and was always prepared to the bar afterwards, have a drink or something.
So you would watch the recordings?
Oh, I'd be there, I'd have to be there,
Of course.
yeah, in case anything went wrong, you know, and they wanted something rewritten on the spot. One had to do it in those days.
And did you have to do a lot of rewriting? Were there lots of occasions where you had to nip in and sort things out?
There was one terrible Christmas, as I say.
Of course, yes.
Yes, not an awful lot. There wasn't much one could do about it. Because in those days the scenery used to wobble, you know.
I know, because they didn't give, as you say, big budgets. I mean, the big budgets went to other kinds
Yeah.
of television, not the popular things that people loved,
no.
but the 6-week
Which
documentary.
was misguided in a way because it was the soaps that brought the viewers.
No, absolutely. Another storyline, very kind of racy storyline for the period, the postboy who was selling and was he using pot. That's another storyline that seems to be a lot of
I
written about.
don't remember that one at all.
No, and it's just because there are so many storylines. That's the thing. I mean, reading through, just so many fantastic characters. Gussie was the character.
Gussie, yes.
She seemed very popular. The viewers loved her.
Yes, yes, and she was almost an accident.
Really?
Yes, because I forget, we'd cast somebody to play a fairly small character. And I don't know what happened to her, but she became ill and couldn't do it at the very last minute. And it so happened that Frances was in the studio for an interview on something else. And the casting director said, she'd do, wouldn't she? And I said, yes, she would, actually. So they said that she was like me, you know, on her own with a baby. And she said, yes, she would. And she was very good. So one continued writing the story.
Yeah, and the viewers, I think she was a soft-hearted character, wasn't she? She was somebody with a lot of empathy. She liked animals. She seems to be a character that runs through that people really warm to.
Yes, yes. She came over as that. She wasn't particularly liked it, didn't it?
Of course, because you knew the actors.
Yeah, oh God, that's so
No. I mean, no. You didn't see anything. It's me. Anything. It's my fault. To kind of sidetrack a little, you worked on Compact with Peter Lynn. Can you say a little bit about your relationship with Peter, your working relationship with him?
I can tell you a lot about it.
Good. A lot would be great.
I knew him because he also worked on children's television. He wrote all the connecting stuff for Whirligig, and I wrote the
spaces.
that. And so we met and kept on meeting because, you know, I'd go to the recordings and he'd go to the recordings and be on hand. So we'd known each other for several years. And when I was asked to write Crossroads, the first one we worked on together.
Or was it Compact, maybe? I think Compact.
No, he didn't write much Compact.
No, but okay.
Did he?
But anyway, you worked quite a lot with them. I mean,
I'd worked in the same studio, although not on the same thing.
Sure, yeah.
And when I was asked to do, well, maybe it was Compact, and they said they wanted so many a week. I thought, I don't know that I can cope with all that.
Yes.
Who do I know who writes long-running things? And I immediately thought of Peter. And Peter's forte was comedy, you see. So I said, when I rang him up and said, did he want to do it? And he said, yes, he did. We agreed that he would write all the comedy bits and I'd write the serious bits. But of course it didn't work out like that because there wasn't, you know...
Well, it's hard to split us.
No,
stories have elements of
when we were starting to work out the storylines, we realised it wasn't going to come
you can't, of course.
So we ended up by saying we'd take because it was twice a week, I think, one each. We'd collaborate on the story of each script, but write the script separately.
And how did that work? I mean, did you manage to, obviously you did, connect each other's, I suppose kind of moving just to work, because I could talk about Compact forever, but it's supposed to be to move on. What do you think then was the big reason for its huge success? If you had to say, you know, what was the secret of Compact's just connection with the viewers, what do you think was the...
It was a very happy show, and I think that came over, that the cast liked each other, they liked the work, they liked the story, and it came over, it exuded a sort of warmth that caught the people, which a lot of shows may be very good, very exciting, but they don't exude a sort of warmth.
Because that's the relationship between the audience and the characters is this very emotional.
Yes.
Where the letters are emotional.
Yes.
You know, as you say, I will absolutely die if, you know, Ian Harmon doesn't come back to the series, or I can't believe he and Sally are not getting, there is this real...
There was, yes,
Mm.
and that came over from the responses we got.
And I suppose the romance as well. I mean, people loved the romantic relationships. Were you sort of aware of how important they were? Did you begin to write more of those, or was that just your natural, the way the
No,
story...
it's just the way
Mm-hmm.
the story went, yes.
Mm-hmm. Just one more thing in Compact. Do you remember writing big set-piece episodes? There's one I read about where the cast went down the Thames to Southend. Did you just decide, I'm going to have an episode that's out of the studio? Because that's quite a big undertaking. How did that come about?
I think there was an anniversary or something. We
Mm.
wanted to do something special.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just thought it'd be something different to do.
Mm. And was it complicated to organise? Was it hard to get more money to take the cast out of the studio and hire this cruiser and all that kind of thing? Or was that other people dealing with that?
Well, we had to get special permission for it, yeah.
Because I mean, it's quite a big
But
thing.
they agreed to it.
Mm-hmm.
But Compact, we had far more problems because, for instance, the romance between the
Of course, the photographer.
it
Yeah.
had to go all the way to the Board of Governors of the BBC to get permission.
I can imagine. So
Whereas, you know, in
you, of
commercial,
course, that makes sense. It's just money and it's practical. It's not, I suppose, highly sensitive.
well, the BBC were far more sensitive about the
Of
subject
course.
matter than, for instance, we had in Crossroads or anything like that.
Yeah, because in Crossroads, I mean, you had so many pioneering stories again.
Yes, but I mean, that was Lou Grade, and all he was interested in is what are the ratings, you know, and the higher the ratings, the
Right.
better pleased he was.
So that's,
Whereas the BBC felt itself above ratings.
and above what people liked. Did that make you cross? Did you think, for goodness sake, you know, people like this, why don't you understand and respect that? Were you cross that the BBC didn't appreciate how popular this programme was?
Well, the first producer did,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm. So when the programme ended, were you simply told the programme will cease in July 1960? You were just told?
just told, yeah.
And you must have been worried about, were you worried about work, or did you have enough contacts and experience
Oh, I
that
was
you knew?
already writing something else by then.
Hmm.
I was doing the two at the same time.
Yeah,
And it was
Crossroads.
Crossroads, yes. It was Crossroads. Because I did a year when I did both.
Nice.
And that was nearly driving me insane.
I can't. So on Crossroads would be how many days a week at that point when you were at the beginning? Was it five? Four? I mean, so
four, yeah.
I don't know. I can't imagine how you managed all that. You did. I'm not going to go on. Maybe we could talk just a little about Crossroads. It's a huge subject, and you know we could be here forever. But how did the idea come about for Crossroads?
How do any ideas come about? I don't really remember.
How did the idea of the motel, you know, setting the story in a motel, how did that?
Well, you know, when you're writing a soap, and it was, I don't remember exactly how many times a week when it was started, I think it was 4.
I think, I mean, it certainly ran across the week. Because,
Yes.
You know, it was again...
But you have to, I mean, it's one of the basics. When you start and you're asked if you will write one, you must have a situation where things happen.
Oh.
You can't
I wouldn't have known that, of course, yes.
a long-running dramatic soap
Mm-hmm.
set in a family, a house, really.
Of course.
Because enough excitement doesn't happen, you know. All right, so you get an electricity bill that you can't pay, but that's, you don't get murders and
No,
babies
fingers
and
crossed,
things
yes.
every week, you know.
Of course, yes.
So you've got to have a place, a hospital, a hotel,
Which of course you've done
school
in
or
all your...
something.
Mhm.
So didn't want a hotel because that was rather I think this was an American series set in a hotel running at the time.
Yeah.
But nobody had done one in a motel.
Which was very modern though, I mean this
Well,
was
very modern, yes. They'd only just started up over here.
and very glamorous. I mean that's the other thing, I think, you know, compact was very glamorous and you know, this is glamorous and people love that. Lovely clothes and things happening that are not the ordinary. And a motel would have been very different and glamorous in 1964.
Well, I think they went for the glamour, but went for the action, because I mean things could happen, did happen, and you had a constantly changing characters you could bring in, you know.
So
There was something, Mary, as well, that in Crossroads, in a motel, the cleaner could have 10 minutes, the owner could have 10 minutes, which hasn't been done before or since. That's the only one. Crossroads is the only one where you have the genuine cross-section of society being shown, which they did intend. They intended that that could be the case
of
as
course.
well. Yeah, I don't know if you understood. I don't know, because that,
No, that's brilliant.
it's the only soap opera that's done it. Most soap operas stay in one class or one area of society. Yeah.
And of course Crossroads had the first black family in a long-running series. And again, because it was Lou Grade, that wasn't as difficult.
No, oh no, not at all.
And did Lou Grade like it? Well, it got great ratings. Did he like the series because it did so well?
I don't know whether he personally liked it,
No,
but
sure,
he approved it, yes.
And did you take lessons that you learned writing compact, for example? When you worked on Crossroads, did you use things that worked in compact when you worked in Crossroads?
No, not necessarily, because, you know, you get with the mood of the thing you're on, you know.
Of course, yeah, and it's a different environment. And again, I mean, some characters that really stand out, obviously Meg. What do you remember about creating Meg's character? Can you say a little about writing the character? Who's the linchpin and the most memorable? Oops.
Can we turn that off?
Yeah. Other characters that are really interesting and memorable. Sandy Richardson, her son.
Yes. He wasn't a paraplegic. He, when we cast him, he was perfectly normal, and he had a terrible motor accident, I think it was.
So in fact...
And, but he was very popular, and he wanted to work, so we just made him have an accident or an illness or something that turned him into a paraplegic. He wasn't one when it started.
And again, this was a pioneering, it was a new storyline. I mean,
Yes.
it was I think it was the first leading character in a wheelchair, I think.
Yes, I think it was. But that was of necessity, because that's what happened to a popular character.
And other characters, obviously, Diane, Benny, Shuey McPhee, the chef, were these characters that you were involved with writing, or had you moved away from being involved with the series at that point?
No, I was with it a couple of years, I think. And then I did the film.
Can you tell us a little bit about the film?
Yes. They decided that, you know, the series was popular and they'd make a film of it. And so they asked me if I'd write the storyline and the script, so I did. But
because I didn't know much about the Crossroads film. That's new. That's information I have to go back and.
But it was funny, because it did very well, but they've shown it on television several times. But it wasn't a little boy in a heartline machine, it was a little girl.
Right.
Which you've got in your...
Yes, that's Emergency Ward 10. Is that the film we're talking about, I think?
Ah.
No, but that's good. It's a little girl, that's it.
It's a little girl,
Yeah.
it wasn't...
Yeah. I'd like to just maybe move finally, because I've taken up an awful lot of your time. I feel I've grilled you. Do you remember Champion House?
Oh, yes.
Now that's something that's kind of slipped a little bit from history, but...
well, for the same reason that it was commissioned and started writing it, but the head of drama changed,
Mhm.
and didn't think it was very good series. Wouldn't be very popular.
Really.
Hmm.
And again, I'm guessing that people really, really liked the series. Champion House, people really enjoyed the series.
No, they did, yeah.
And that was set in a Yorkshire, it was a textile.
Mill, yeah.
Yeah. And again, I guess that was a place where lots of different storylines
Yes,
to take place.
yes.
Fantastic. I think maybe a little bit of a breather now.
Lovely,
I
lovely,
think
lovely,
so.
lovely.
That's been great. Yes, and that's very interesting stuff. So it's very hard to raise money to make films.
Absolutely impossible. It was
Mhm.
very, very difficult. And it was only possible, really, if you had something that people recognised. And they recognised soap, you see, the
People love.
producers. And
Yeah.
they thought, oh, well, maybe, you know,
Mhm.
it would be a good idea to have something
Mhm.
written by someone who's done a
Mm.
soap opera. And so I got into films writing them. And then when there was an absolute dearth, because there was,
Mm.
of money to make films,
Mhm.
I rather traded on the popularity of the soaps going round and sort of saying, well,
course.
if you could have a sort of soap opera type film or anything.
Mhm.
And I managed to scrape together one. Having done it once, it became a bit easier
Mhm.
after that to find people, you know, because distributors knew
Mhm.
that one had a film that was popular, so
Mhm.
they would listen
Of
to it
course.
and they would put up some money. But it was never easy.
But now you're in the film
Never
business.
easy.
And did you like?
Always a struggle.
Yeah, did you like working in the film industry as opposed to television? I mean, how did it feel?
Yes, I did, because we had more time.
Yeah, of course.
Television is more immediate, you know,
Mhm.
and you could reshoot
No, it's true.
if it didn't work, whereas television is over and done with.
I mean, television, particularly in the early period, is very demanding.
Oh, yes.
Because if you didn't get it right... it
But
went
I
out.
remember the days when, I mean, for instance, at Alexandra Palace,
Mhm.
they had 2 studios there, and you'd have one set in one studio and one in another. And you had to run between the 2, tripping over the cables, the camera cables, as
No.
you went. You did. And so you had to write so that somehow or other somebody had to go and put a kettle on or something and come back to give time for them
I mean, the
to
business...
run, literally run.
The business of writing under those conditions becomes even more difficult.
Oh,
You don't even just have actors, you've got to make
it's
sure that you can...
absolutely a nightmare. It's far more, as they say, perspiration than inspiration.
No, it sounds very stressful, and, you know, there's no second chances.
No,
I mean, if it goes out and it's a mess, it's a
It's
mess.
a mess. And it did sometimes.
No, but it seems that people didn't appreciate that. I mean, when they talk about
Oh no,
walking
well it
scenery-
take the magic away if you go into that.
Something else I wanted to ask you about. You ran the Writers Guild in 1964? 65? 64?
I was chairman for 2 years, yes.
I think.
60,
Am I talking?
65, 66 I think, because I went to America,
Mm-hmm.
66.
No, you
I
saw
think
Charles
so.
mentioned it, yeah.
Hmm.
How did you get that job? I mean, that's a very, very high-powered...
Well, I was a founder member of the Writers
Of course,
Guild.
yes.
5 of us. Brian Forbes was one, I remember.
Gosh, Brian Forbes. Yeah, I like Brian Forbes.
Yeah.
Who else can you remember? It's very interesting. That
Yeah,
period.
who else? Ted Willis.
Oh, who of course makes an appearance in Compact.
Yes.
He comes in, yeah, Ted Willis, very interesting group. And you're the only woman, I guess.
Yes. At that time, yeah. Well, not a member, but the only
Yeah.
woman chairman at that time.
Which is, what did that entail? What kind of stuff?
Oh, terrible. I would be a multimillionaire if I hadn't done that job.
Honestly, so.
Well, I couldn't do the amount of writing. I couldn't do soaps and things while I was chairman. I mean, I went to America, you see. I went all over the world.
It's a very prestigious job. I mean, it's an incredibly important job.
Well, it was important, I think, because I was the one who got royalties for writers.
I heard a little that you challenged Lou Grade about money.
Yeah, I did. I went to see him in his office.
And
he wanted me to write Crossroads. Well, he wanted it. And I said, all right, I'll write Crossroads and give us royalties. And he did. I mean, I think he would have done anyway in the end, but we got to a stalemate in the negotiations. And he wanted Crossroads. So he said, oh.
And do you think writers
He actually said a rude word.
And do you think writers were poorly treated? Do you think writers were poorly treated? And
oh, they were terrible, because, you know, there'd be shows like The Avengers, where they had American writers getting royalties, and the British writers didn't. And it was so unfair, because they were writing the same scripts, you see, but they were different pay structure and didn't get royalties.
It must have made you... Okay.
And I said, you know, it's just not right and it's not fair, and I won't do this show unless we get royalties.
Yeah. Because, I mean, absolutely the same work.
Oh, yeah.
So but sadly that job involved so much that you got taken away from the writing.
Yes.
And is writing what you liked best? Was that your... Of all the things, is that the thing you enjoyed the most?
I don't enjoy writing at all. I absolutely loathe it. And I only did it because I had a large family to support. I hate it.
Just in your career now, a lot of people are very interested in what you've done. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
That surprised me, I must say.
I'm surprised that, I mean, you're very modest, but I'm very surprised that, you know, you don't realise just how much you've written. I'm embarrassing you, I'll stop, but people are very, very interested. And, you know, this will be a little starting point in you know, talking about the work. And people are going to love seeing Compact. Everybody that we've shown an episode of Compact to has loved it. Because it's so glamorous. So I think...
Well, I got the idea when I was sitting in Woman's Own, waiting to see the editor. And I thought that this is such a wealth of atmosphere and story here. Why has nobody thought about writing about it?
Maybe because you were a woman, you saw stories that men wouldn't. Could we maybe say that? Maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I know you didn't do it on purpose, but would a man have seen the potential?
No, I don't think they would.
And I wonder if that's, as a woman, what you see as the potential that men wouldn't see in situations.
Well, you see, soaps are very much a woman's viewing thing, not a man's. Although we did get quite a lot of
Glaswegians
admirers, but it's mostly a woman's thing. And yet the top echelon in the management and financing are all men, or were in those days. And so they don't really have any idea about the difference in taste in viewing, I think.
I think that's where your real skill came in, because you saw the potential in relationships, and you know, people love romantic relationships. I mean, I think soap operas today are driven by the formula you created, which is relationships and emotions and connections, and you can really see that what you've done has become, that's what was, you wrote the first soap operas for British television.
Yes.
Which is something that needs to be in the history books. You're the first person. you know, the truth of
The
it,
first queen of soap.
that should be the book title. The first queen of soap. No, because you look at EastEnders, which gets all the publicity, and really, they're just doing the kinds of things that you were doing, you know, 20 years before. And in the same time slots, that really interests me. EastEnders sits in the slots that Compact's at.
Yes.
I was thinking about that.
Oh, I realised that, yeah.
Yeah, it just really struck me that EastEnders, which gets all the glory, actually is kind of after, it's after Compact. So hopefully we'll be able to get all these things out there. Shall we?
I don't know if it's
So
interesting to you.
maybe, you know, as a result of this, someone will offer me some work.
That'd be interesting.
Well, your family will kill me if you're at that desk writing, and they would say that woman.
No, we'll push it to the desk.
Yeah, but
No.
nobody,
she
I
wants
think
to,
most
she
people
wants
think I'm dead, you see.
She'd like work, even though she says she hates it.
No, they do, you see. Hazel Adair, who's that?
And yet everyone knows your work. I mean,
Hmm.
the sort of, you can say to a 16-year-old college student doing a 1-year media programme, and if you say Crossroads, everybody knows it.
Hmm.
I mean, that's, your work is known. We could go into a school and say to 14-year-olds Crossroads, and I know they would know it.
I think you need to be
I don't
recognised
think
by
I
a
want
national
that on my own
certificate.
job.
I do.
Crossroads. I'd rather be known for.
I know. Although I think people again have a wrong idea of Crossroads. I think that it's become a couple of stereotypes, and it certainly isn't that. I think people they don't have a particularly good knowledge of what you did. And did you like working for the BBC, or did you prefer working for ITV? Was it
I just
different?
like to work, you know.
Was it different though? Was it more
Oh,
of a
totally
gentleman's club
different,
in
yes.
the BBC? Yeah.
Yeah, totally different. I mean, the BBC, well, in the days when I was doing Compact, everything had to be approved in various layers, whereas in ITV you just had to please your producer and that was it.
Which feels very modern. I mean, Lou Grade's idea of ratings is how things are today. I mean, that seems a very modern place to work. You would fit in really well in a sense, because it is about ratings now. So, do you remember the kind of the big wigs at the BBC, like Hugh Weldon and people? Oh, do you want the camera off you?
No, I
I'm
do.
interested because did you have?
We didn't, we weren't sort of
No.
friends or anything, but I mean, he would acknowledge me in the street and things like that. But no, I didn't get on. You know, I don't think he'd offer me a drink in the bar or anything like that, whereas other producers might.
Do you think he felt that the work that he was doing was
Oh,
better
it
than?
was very much,
Oh yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? Status regarded, and writers were at the bottom of the tree in those days.
So the people doing all the hard work down in the galley of the ship were the ones who were of little import. It's interesting. Did you ever encounter Grace Wyndham Goldie?
I do remember her.
Because I did a lot of research into her. I'm just interested as to, because she was another woman, in a sense, sitting out
Yes.
her own. What did you think? How did she strike you?
I didn't know her that well. We moved in different
Of course, yes,
circles,
sure,
so you know, one didn't sort of have a drink in the club with her or anything like that. Whereas,
who were the friendly? Who were the people that you could have a drink with? Were there other writers or?
oh yes, and directors and most people very friendly.
Dennis Norden.
Just a few who had a sense of importance.
Yes, so Dennis Norden, for example, he was somebody that you.
Oh,
knew.
we were great mates. Yes.
Was he? He always seems tremendously good fun. Was he as good fun in life
Yes,
as
he
seems?
was. Yes. And he and Frank.
Oh, Frank Muir, of course.
Yeah, had an office. Do you know BBC?
I do. Yes.
And they have two sets of offices, an inner ring and an outer ring.
Yep.
And corridor between the two. And Frank and Dennis had an office on the inner ring,
Mhm.
and Peter, Ling and I had one immediately opposite them.
Oh, so
And so, you know, when the coffee lady came round, we would say, oh, hi, you know, and at one point we'd send rude notes across to each other and things like that. But
so it was good.
it was very funny, yes.
So it was good fun. I mean, you enjoyed.
And I missed that sort of camaraderie, you know.
Because I guess they were righteous too. I suppose there would be lots of common ground because they were, you know, producing lots of scripts and material as well.
Yes, yes.
So it was a kind of fellow feeling.
Yes.
Was it this?
And it was funny because it was terrible competition to get a car parking space there, you see.
I like to do that.
Oh, and they had them, as you go in, there's an inner circle where you park cars, and then there's the drive round, and then there's the back car park. And the competition to get one in the inner ring, so you just, and you didn't have miles to walk in the horrible weather. And you know, once you got one in the inner ring, you'd fight tooth and nail not to give it up.
Oh.
And it was terrible, you know. And actually, people used to make it a point of their contract. They wanted a car park in the...
Did you?
In that I'll do that show for you if I have a car park space.
You're right. Once you lift the curtain from television, some of the magic disappears ever so slightly. People worrying about car parking. Was it the same kind of atmosphere when you were writing at ITV? I mean,
oh no, because I mean that was all over the shop.
Yeah.
You know. You're going for Crossroads. You had to go to Birmingham. For
it was a
instance.
journey, yeah.
And used to stay overnight.
Oh, so that wouldn't, I mean, you children, that would have been practically very difficult, I imagine.
It was.
And upsetting as well.
You used to have to catch a train
Oh.
from Euston, I think it was, we went.
It would be, yeah, that's right, yeah. Oh, that's a long journey.
And because I lived down here in those days, and you used to have to get myself to Euston Station.
Oh, I sympathise.
For a 7 o'clock train. I mean, in order to catch a train up to Birmingham, you see.
You must have had very good health. I mean, your health must have been, you must have been very, well, no, seriously, practical considerations.
Stamina is the
well, no,
word.
really, I mean, to kind of produce all that television and be up at those times in the morning and have a big family to look after. It's just a lot of considerations. And again, as a woman, you know, perhaps more responsibility for a family than a man would have had.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that's something that a lot of the male figures in television that we write about, they didn't have these considerations. You were doing all 6 children to think about, which is quite something. I forgot what I was going to say now. I got so interested in the car parking.
I don't know if it's interesting to
All
talk
of it.
about, but Hazel started off a lot of people's careers. Like Barry Cryer said that Hazel helped her enormously, and a lot of people. I went to some television things, and there were people around the table who started off like on Compact or this and that, because Hazel was so early on. A lot of people who made Pop Idol and invented things started obviously that's the way it worked, would start as a runner or floor person
really
on Hazel's thing. So a lot of people knew who Hazel. So that's one, and two was there were so few women up above. Who's
Beryl Virtue.
Beryl Virtue. There were so few women in power that Hazel was saying last year that although you know she was writing in women's television, and in some ways you know there's all this women's thing, but there's so few women in power that there wasn't a friendship between the powerful women. You know, that she was slightly alienating as a woman.
No.
So there was, you know, that actually she wasn't very helpful point. She wasn't feeling, even though she was writing all this women's television, the atmosphere she was writing in wasn't that supportive as a woman from other women. The men were more supportive.
That makes a lot of sense.
So she got more friendship and alliance from men. I don't know if you feel like asking about that. So, which is why, you know, you can see, although she obviously is writing all this women's stuff from women's perspective, the women, the support, you can see why there's so few women, they're all out for themselves.
No, I think that's a brilliant, will that be captured in the tape? Yeah, you've made it perfectly.
I don't know if that's useful from Hazel.
It's
I don't know if you want to from Hazel's voice.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's extremely useful to have the. No, I understand that for women there were so few of you that you were just getting on and doing your job, and that you weren't thinking about you doing anything especially different to anybody else.
Yeah.
But also there wasn't any alliance.
No.
They would like, it was basically like, because there were so few women, it was men who were, it was, Hazel said last year, you said it was like, you couldn't really rely on another woman because there was one, it's like an animal pack, you know, there's one woman and she's out for herself, you know, it's like,
I think
not a safe, the women who were making
that's a good word for it, absolutely.
It wasn't a safe place for another woman to lie with another woman. Because there were so few and they were just out, it was men who were supporting.
Well, the mentors, no, that makes
men
sense.
Men who, like, your male friends, you had more men friends, you were saying that.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, yeah.
I always thought it was because I was pretty.
Obvious.
They were just after you for your body, Hazel.
I had one in those days.
Clearly they were after you for your body, Hazel, but the women weren't. Not in the same way.
Don't be beastly to me. I thought it was my work.
I wasn't.
No, but that's so true. I mean, I've read about, for example, Grace Wyndham Goldie. I don't know if this is true or not, but from the literature I've read about her career, she wasn't very kind to women who were starting out, and she was much nicer to the young men.
Well, I quite believe it, yes.
You know, and absolutely that, you know, the young women coming through had to be terrifically confident or pure confident not to get trampled on. I mean, it was very hard because young men were seen as being naturally,
yes.
you know.
I think that's fairly true because women had to fight much harder to get where they were, so they protected their position.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, people saying, oh, look at that woman, you know, trying to push herself forward, that isn't how women should behave. There must have been a little bit of that, you know, what's ladylike and how women should behave. You know, maybe pushing yourself forward was not something women were necessarily...
I wasn't conscious of pushing
No, not you,
forward.
not you. But I think for women it would be hard to take control as you did to get where you got. And who were the men that you most enjoyed? Who were the colleagues like Frank and Dennis?
Oh, I loved them, yes, they were great. There's so many.
Johnny Spate.
Oh, really?
Oh, well, nobody could be very friendly with Johnny. He was a sad soul. But I knew him quite well, but he, in a way, he was terribly shy and nervous.
Really?
And he stuttered terribly, so he found it difficult to communicate with people.
So.
And so people, in a way, avoided talking to him because it was so difficult to carry on a conversation. And he was aware of the fact they were avoiding him, but not realising why. And he was rather a sad character.
Goodness. Something else that also strikes me, did you watch television yourself?
Didn't have a lot of time, but yes, I did. And I suffered from my family terribly because they'd watch and they'd say, now you can tell me, you know, what's going to happen and everything. And I said, if I told you, it'd be all round the school and I'm not going to tell you, so there.
Did you have any favourite writers? Are there people, other colleagues who wrote for television whose work you particularly like or you think is particularly good?
Oh, no, I don't think I'm going to get into that realm.
Okay.
What about Coronation Street? What about Coronation Street?
Well, I was asked to do that, but it meant going up to Manchester, you see.
But perhaps you. But in terms of loving programmes, that's your.
I'm addicted to Coronation Street. I still am.
So you think that's the one that stands out even now?
Yes, I think it's amazing how it's kept its quality.
It has, hasn't it? And it seems to reinvent itself. I don't know if you think for each new audience, it seems to.
Yes.
You know, kind of revivify itself.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, should we maybe stop there, because I feel like if I don't stop I'll be here quizzing you about your life.
Sorry to Mary, and you might not be relevant, but I was just thinking, where did, if it was appropriate for you to ask, where did Hazel get the fearlessness to dare from so early on as a woman, even though we've talked about this and you were saying it's there weren't any writers and everyone, but where did the fearlessness to come to push black people, unmarried mothers, black and white kids, where did the fearlessness to come to just push all this through? Where did your fearlessness come from?
I wasn't aware that I had fearlessness. I just thought it's a good story, I'm going to write it.
In a very conservative society, especially a conservative BBC, where did that...
I wouldn't have called the BBC conservative at all.
Would you not, in the 50s and 60s?
It was the readiest place on earth.
And they had the Christmas trees, didn't they, on the files that marked out who was very like, I remember reading, they put Christmas trees, I remember, on people's files, and it said if you were very, very left-leaning,
So the BBC was up for changing society with representing black people, unmarried mothers?
It was a difficult time because they were frightened in those days and everything had to go up the layers, as I say, at one point to the Board of Governors to get approval. Whereas working, when I worked for ITV, you were just responsible to your producer.
So were you frightened of losing your job when it went to the Board of Governors?
Was I frightened for my job?
Yeah.
I didn't know it had gone to the Board of Governors till afterwards.
And then you had to go to the Board of Governors. Okay, so you didn't have the fear.
No.
I think that's been terrific this afternoon. I'd like to thank you very much, all of you.
Not at all.
It's been lovely, and
well, I mean, if you want to ring and check anything, feel free.
I feel we certainly want to be back in contact to let you know about the day, and I don't know if any of you would want to come to the day, but you'd be very welcome. I know you've all got busy lives, but the day on the 8th of October when we're showing Hazel's film, I'll leave the flyer, and I will be back in touch if that's okay. I don't want to be a pest though.
No, that's all
I think you've seen and heard enough of me.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Yeah. No, and I think that from this there's going to be a lot of scholarly interest in your work.
That's so brilliant.
I know it sounds horrible.
No, honestly, that's being modest, isn't it? This was a pleasure, wasn't it, Hazel?
What?
Was this a pleasure with Mary?
Oh yes,
this was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure for me, but
pleasure because it's really honouring Hazel. So thank you so much.
But I mean, honestly, to me it seems obvious. I don't understand why there isn't the scholarly work about it.
She hasn't had any of this properly, so this is the first proper, isn't it? This is the first proper thing. So.
Oh well, we're thrilled. The women that work on my project were all with their fingers crossed today that I would do a good job. I was worried, so I can text.
You've been brilliant.
No, it was Hazel and I together.
You've been brilliant, Mary. You're
thank
such
you.
a good interviewer.
No, brilliant subject. But no, I should certainly be back in touch and just thank you so much.
Not at all.
Because you didn't need to do that, and it's a lot suddenly of somebody raking over all these things.
Well, I'm sorry, my memory is not the best.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think your memory is very, very good.
Especially the Queen Mum. That's genius.
That is
Blue grade, Queen Mum.
I know.
Very, very good.
I think so, and the film will be fabulous. The event that we're having to have an actual, real star of television writing to be on our screens will be amazing.
I know, because also the fact that you're still here, Days, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way, but we've got longevity genes in the family.
You have actually, yeah. And you're lucky.
Yeah, it's amazing to have oral history.
Yes.
Yeah, this is very much what we wanted as well, to start getting your story recorded, because it's very important. Those stories about Lou Braid, they've just disappeared. And about writing and about the conditions. This is history.
Oh, do you want to tell your story about the toilets?
Oh yes.
Are you happy to tell that story about
Remember
the
when
toilets?
you were given an office?
Yeah.
Do
you want one little bit more? It's a funny story.
Yeah, is that okay?
When Associated Rediffusion, which was one of the major, it was the London station of ITV when it started in 1955. Well, actually this happened in 54. And they were still building television house in Kingsway.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And they put me in an office there, and they were still in the building, and I shared my office with 12 lavatories.
I'm boggled, isn't it?
Not plumbed in.
Not plumbed in, no.
Your office wasn't
They
the
were all
toilet block.
stacked round the wall. And I thought, this is good inspiration.
You can write under those conditions.
I thought, oh, else is this what they think of me? for?
But the early days of television are fascinating. People don't realise. I mean, when it was just being invented, I mean, it was.
We were actually given a clothes cleaning allowance because we came home every night thick with dust. I had to get straight
That
into
was emergency ward 10. She was in that's emergency ward 10. We were in very, very dusty, wasn't it? That's right.
I know it was not emergency ward 10. It was Associated Rediffusion,
was them,
which
you were
was
thick
the
with
London.
dust.
It was ATV did emergency ward 10.
So which was the show you were thick with dust with?
The Associated Rediffusion,
Hmm.
which did. Oh God, I don't
Maybe
remember.
Sixpenny
Sixpenny
Corner.
Corner. Sixpenny Corner.
Because that's the very beginning, 1955. ITV
Yeah.
is just opening its doors September,
Yeah.
and that's the very first soap opera.
It was the very first programme ever shown
well,
on commercial television.
so for that alone, we need that in the history books. I hadn't realised. So that
It
Why
was
did
funny
this
because the second programme was an advertising programme which my husband directed. So we had the first two programmes on television,
so that's a fact that
on commercial
Well,
television.
we need to document because there's other people.
One was 11 and one was 11:30.
Because of course, because
In
it
the
was
morning.
because it was daytime television. It was the lunchtime slot, which invented the daytime television slot. You were the first for that as well. A lot of firsts.
He did the Black Nativity as well, which was
Oh,
the
of
first
course.
at the
Oh,
time.
that's-
He directed that.
Mm.
Oh, that was a fantastic piece of television.
He got an award for that.
Oh, quite. I mean, that's an incredibly important piece of TV. I guess I'm
Yeah.
going to stop simply
Brilliant.
because I think that it's been superb, and I'll be back in touch, I'm afraid. So wait
Be all
for
right.
the Scottish voice. You'll know it's me.
Well, I mean, don't feel you've got to go because of me. If there's anything else you want.
No, I think we've pretty much done. I think that's because it's been a lot, and I'll certainly be in touch. And it's been great, and thank you both, ladies.
Thank
It's been,
you so
it's
much.
lovely to meet you all.
Lovely, thank you so
Yeah.
much. And it's,
Oh.
it's very interesting for us. So thank
Yeah,
you.
no, it is.
really.
It's you know, I've heard a lot of it before, but there are
Not
bits
bits,
that I
not
haven't heard
certain
before,
bits,
so
Yeah,
And
it's
there's so
really,
much. I mean, I feel in your memory. There's so much.
it's
there.
really, really helped us, Mary, because it's all right. Well, you say your bit anyway. I'm a love coach and I work with relationships and love specifically, and also starting to do TV and writing magazines and CDs. I don't know if you want to say anything more. No, it's all right. That's okay. Anyway, there's quite strong links with what we do.
Hearing about the commissioning things, that's fascinating. My career's been plagued by commissioning editors, new commissioning editors coming in and having programmes cancelled. So I'm an actress.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened to me over my career so many times, even programmes that are nominated for a BAFTA and things like that. And to hear that happened, I didn't know that happened to you, Daisy, over your career. It's just, for me, that's such a mirror.
Oh, it's
Yes.
always.
I mean, of course it is, but I didn't, somehow I thought it was just, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen to everybody either. They get in at the time when
Yes,
it
different.
doesn't happen to everybody.
There's an awful lot of luck
Yes.
Yeah.
being in the right place at the right
I think
time.
that's true.
Right.
And also
Right.
taking advantage as well, I think.
Yes.
Being in the right place, but doing what you did and saying,
Yes, you're right.
I'll get those scripts written. There
Yeah.
might be 12 lavatories. But I'm doing it. I think it's true. It's taking your moment and saying,
So true.
I've got to, even when inside you're thinking, oh, can't do this. Just
true.
get
Well, I
on
never
there.
thought I can't.
No, me, not you. That's inside
That's
you.
what's interesting, Hazel.
Yeah.
That's what's
yeah,
interesting.
because I think most people think, but I think to say, well,
You didn't. You
No.
just went for it.
I had to.
Still interesting.
Yeah.
Still interesting.
yeah, sometimes you have to and you just don't, you
Yes,
can't bring
exactly.
yourself to
That's
do
right.
it. No,
That's right.
that's been good.
I simply can't be beaten. That's my problem, you know.
That's interesting.
Well, yeah,
Which I think is a tremendous virtue. And to turn that into all that work that gave people so much pleasure. I think that's the other thing, so much pleasure your writing's given people. I didn't stress that maybe enough. All the pleasure people have had from these programmes.
Oh, that's nice of you.
But I
to
think
say
that's
that.
the thing, I think that's the thing, people love these programmes, and to have made that place in people's kind of hearts and in their memories. You know, and my own mum, like in Glasgow, watched Compact in the 60s, and for people in Glasgow that was very glamorous, and I remember her saying it was just glamour and different and so not the normal workaday world of Glasgow at that time. And
Yeah.
I think that for people is such a thing to have produced, you know. So, awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Fantastic.
thank the lady
No,
herself.
brilliant, brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant.
set the side
But Mary,
for-
you
Sorry.
really made that come alive. Thank you so
I
much.
think it was lovely. It just felt very relaxed. Thank you for all
It was brilliant.
making it very relaxed. I've had very scary interviews.
It was excellent, excellent.